done a lot on this program in the past about drones, the unmanned air systems, and what they do for good, whether they're delivering blood or packages, or whether it's air taxis or great photography. But what happens when the technology gets into the wrong hands? Well, there are a lot of good brains thinking about this, and how do we protect ourselves against this kind of threat? And we're joined by one of the leaders in that business now from Raytheon Missiles Defense. We're joined by Tom Laliberty, who's the Vice President for Land Warfare and Defence. Tom, welcome to the programme. Now tell us, what do we do about this threat of UASs?
The UAS threat is particularly challenging because of the large range of the types of these vehicles now available to adversaries. And they come at relatively low cost. So because of that, they come sometimes in great volume. Now, what makes them particularly challenging to air defenders around the world is the ability to synchronize complex attacks with UAS with drones, cruise missiles, aircraft, and ballistic missiles. So with that total combination, you can overwhelm a singular air defense system. So when you look at critical infrastructure like oil refineries, government facilities, forward operating bases, airports, places where you have civilian populations, the additional threat of the UAS is of great concern.
So how does that relate to the threats that we already face? Because it's extra to all of that. How do you manage to kind of separate the two threats?
So certainly there's a lot of overlap in both the technology that you use to defeat UASs and then the operational constructs that the military use for UASs. They're very, very similar to what they use for also conventional air threats. The key to effective defense is to have a layered, tiered, and well-integrated system. There isn't one single solution or silver bullet that can defeat the entire threat set. So think of it as defense in depth. You want to expose each attack to multiple optimized countermeasures that ensure that you can defeat the threat using the combination of these things. So if you think about it, you have to first be able to see the drones. So you got to be able to detect them and track them. You've got to be able to determine, what type of object it is. The very small UASs sometimes might look like birds. The very large UASs might look like either military or commercial aircraft. So you have to have very competent sensing technology and the ability to do identification of these objects. So to do that, Raytheon Missiles and Defense has really a really great set of sensing technologies. We have a compact Ku band radio frequency system called KERFs, typically, and that provides high precision 360-degree surveillance to detect very small targets. We also have the Sentinel radar. There's about 300 of these in the field today. That uses X-band technology for detection and engagement of larger UASs and those that go at longer ranges. And then we have the C-band Patriot radar. And those are for even longer ranges, and that radar is capable of engaging classes of threats all the way from small UAVs up through tactical ballistic missiles.
Yeah, Tom, we've seen in Saudi Arabia, for example, in recent times, the number of threats there that are being taken out every day. And I think Raytheon has a contract now with Saudi to do that. That's a known threat. What happens in those countries now where things are peaceful, you haven't got wars going on your borders? Should you be preparing for the potential of dangerous UAS?
Absolutely. I think I think if you look around the world, in almost every region, without getting specific to any individual country, I think you can see, both state and non-state actors that have the ability to acquire things like low-cost UAS that essentially present these threats, in addition to the threats that they already presented with aircraft, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. So I think the real goal here is to stay ahead of the threat and essentially to deter the threat so that there's the adversary doesn't even try to make an attack like that.
And if we look at the smaller threats, if you like, we've seen in a number of places around the world, airports, for example, that have had to close because there's been a hobbyist just within a kilometre or so of the airfield. Does the Raytheon systems kind of account for that you can actually look at these hobby ones as well? How do we stop that happening before they become real threats?
Very, very, kind of very similar to what I was just mentioning, that the first thing to do is to track them, locate them, track them, and identify them so that you know what they are. And then once you know what they are, determine whether or not it is actually hostile. Is it actually threatening that airport, or is it just a hobbyist out playing with his toy that went into the wrong place? If it turns out that it is a hostile threat, then you've got to figure out how to deal with it. And in populated areas like around an airport, we have the ability to use non-kinetic effects, so essentially directed energy. We have two systems that are used for that. One is called phaser, that uses high-powered microwave energy to essentially disrupt and defeat the electronics of the UAS. And then we have the high-energy laser system, high-energy laser weapon system, that essentially uses laser technology to target a high-energy beam on the UAS and essentially defeat it that way.
Thanks, Tom. Well, that's the civil case. What about the bigger threat, the militaries? What sort of things do you actually have to defend against that?
Sure, Alan. Well, when we get to the real military applications, we get into kinetic defectors. And one of the kinetic defectors that we're just bringing to the scene now is something called Coyote. Coyote has been shown to be very effective in complex threat scenarios where you might have swarms of UAVs that attack defended areas. So Coyote has the ability to go out and actually defeat multiple drones at a time. Now we pair Coyote with the CURFS radar, and we integrate that on a platform called LIDS for the United States Army. And that's actually what's pictured behind me in the scene here, is that platform. Now, as we get to more longer range, higher altitude threats, we start getting into some of our other effectors, including the land-based phalanx weapon system, the Stinger, AIM-9X, AMRAAM, and Patriot missiles. And then finally, pulling it all together, where we have sensors and effectors, you need a battle management or command and control system. And for that, we have a system like NASAMS, which pairs the Sentinel radar with a number of effectors, and then our Patriot air missile defense system that pulls also a number of effectors together. So in the end, you end up with a layered and highly integrated capability that defeats counter-UAS, air-breathing threats, and ballistic missiles in a very well-integrated and coordinated